This is Navigating the New Normal, how the global meat industry can profit from the unexpected. Eagle is a global company, and since this pandemic hit and the world practically shut down, we haven't been able to travel to get together in person. So a couple of weeks ago, I had a Teams meeting with 3 of our meat experts to discuss what's going on in the industry. We talked about what's happening in different regions and how our meat customers are managing. I recorded this meeting so I could share it with you all today. It's only about 30 minutes long. After the recording, Mike, Steve, and Mauricio will join us live from their homes to address your questions. Without further delay, I will share my screen and hit play. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Eagle Speaks. My name is Christy Draus, and I am the marketing manager for Eagle Product Inspection. This COVID-19 pandemic has affected economies on a global scale, and it's changing how manufacturers and customers are conducting business. So I thought it would be a good idea to get our foremost meat experts together on a Teams chat so they could discuss market changes in their region and tell us how their meat industry customers are coping. With that being said, I'm very happy to interview our 3 most formidable meat experts from Eagle Products Inspection today. Together, they have more than 50 years of experience working with meat processors. Welcome, Michael Stewart from the EMEA region, Steve Dowd, representing the North American region, and Mauricio Arias, representing the Latin American region. So I'd like to just go ahead and begin by hearing from each one of you. Please share with all of us your top 2 observations for your region. Mike, how about you go first?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Christy, and hello to everybody. Yeah, there's been an awful lot of change going on in various meat plants around Europe at the moment, obviously driven by the current circumstances. And certainly the way that it's affecting Eagle, if you like, is that visitors going into factories at the moment is pretty much been put on hiatus. So actually getting in to talk to customers about how their systems are running, how their production lines are operating, that's a real challenge. And then, of course, on top of that, there's all sorts of travel restrictions in place, which is causing and creating various challenges to support those customers who already have systems in place. But when a customer does need some form of support or has some kind of question, and they really want to visit the plant, all the saying is that they can only really accept one person. So when that one person goes to discuss or talk with an existing customer, or potentially a new customer, about what it is they are looking to learn about, what it is they're looking to do, that individual has to go well equipped, because they have to have all the answers. They need to have that comprehensive understanding of meat processing, X-ray technology, you name it, how it's supported, etc. And that's a real challenge. I don't know how you guys are addressing that, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, the U.S. has obviously been impacted like everyone else with our supply chain. There's been a major shift from food service to retail. You know, with all the restaurants closing, a lot of the manufacturers had to shift a lot of their lines to keep up with consumption in the retail market. We are starting to see that start to reverse here in the States with restaurants reopening. Obviously, it's not at the prior capacities yet. We also are continuing to see plants be really susceptible to higher levels of exposure, and their employees are also at risk to contract the virus. And this has led to some of these manufacturers modifying their workplace practices and introducing greater levels of PPE.
Yep. I mean, I first started seeing this all over Latin America, and now we see it across the globe with PPEs. Personal protective equipment has always been an important and key element with food manufacturers. So in these facilities, bringing in any outside contamination is always a no-no. But in today's reality, they're now having to deal with COVID-19. So things like washing stations, boot cleaning stations, face masks, and hairnets are not the only preventative measure that they're having to take today. Shield guards are now being installed in between plant operators. This is all to limit the spread of COVID-19. But this too can be challenging because of how congested some of these trim lines can get. Now, this is all inside the plant, but before workers even enter the plant, facilities are using thermal scanners, checking for body temperatures. So if your temperature is reaching anywhere between 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit or 38 degrees Celsius, you will be placed aside for further questioning. Now, if you're an international traveler like myself, today you're having to be quarantined 14 days in the country prior to any plant visit.
Well, it sounds to me like no matter what part of the world we're all in, businesses are experiencing some of the same challenges. What changes have Eagle made to accommodate customers' needs during these times?
Well, I mean, since we're also an OEM, we've installed similar restrictions to ensure our production is not impacted. We've implemented all of the recommended CDC guidelines, such as limiting non-essential visitors. That's both on the sales and service side. We reduced our office employee footprint. We've shifted workers to more at-home schedules. We've also started to increase remote training sessions and bettered our online support. One of the fortunate areas for us is we already have regional service techs, and this has actually helped us to address some of the restrictions on flights and other travel exposure. Eagle's also provided PPE to all of our sales and service, and we also send out pre-qualification surveys to our customers to make sure that our techs are going to be safe. One of the areas that's really interesting is we've actually started an augmented reality program, and that's going to allow us for greater remote support from our customers, where we can actually be with the customer over a cell phone or other video device and troubleshoot the equipment remotely. So that'll be something that's going to go forward. Another thing we've done is we've installed virtual FATs. So whenever a unit is coming off the production line and a customer wants to inspect that unit, they can actually do so remotely via cameras, and they could do the whole test setup in our factory remotely. So that's one of the new things we've done as well.
Very good. So the new normal, we have heard this phrase a lot lately.
Everywhere.
What market changes do you expect, or have you already started to see?
The new normal. I think the thing is there is no normal anymore. It's just gone out the window. Those traditional ways of operating now seem to have been thrown into this massive state of flux. I mean, Steve was just touching on it there between how businesses or meat manufacturers, which could have a nice balance between selling into the retail sector and the food service sector. Food service has shut off, but at the same time, retail has spiked, and as a consequence, manufacturers are having to change their lines so that they can meet this different demand on the products that they produce. And so what that's created is a real need for efficiency. What I'm hearing from customers all across Europe is we're going through this state of change. It's expensive. So how can we do it in the most efficient way? And how can we ensure that the equipment that we produce or use to produce what we need is going to protect us from any of the liabilities that we could be exposed to, contaminants, all the issues we were talking about earlier with regards to people or operators using the production lines. So when those manufacturers are looking for solutions, it's not just about equipment, it's about the way that equipment is going to be used. So if there is equipment that's available with the manner in which labour is used in the production line, perhaps optimize the way labour units gets used in the factory, manufacturers are acutely interested in learning about that. I mean, this kind of challenging demand that's coming in terms of changing their production line, it's basically about shifting resources from one area to the other. how there's still that demand overall actually slightly increased in terms of meat products that are being consumed, albeit from the retail side. But this, combined with the challenges of operators in the line, it's also combined with the fact that there's a real challenge in the labour market, and identifying how to keep hold of that high quality labour whilst at the same time make maximum use of it. It's in those areas that Eagle's got a pretty comprehensive solution to be able to assist manufacturers make the best use of that human element, that human resource in their production lines. Because as these changes are being implemented, that's costing money. So we need to be able to provide or offer solutions that provide not just the ability to produce the products that they want to the safest and highest quality possible, but also in the most flexible way as well.
Yep. So in the U.S., I mean, we've definitely seen that the virus is highlighted, if nothing more, the growing shift in supply chains regionally. I mean, we know that there is some trade disputes between China and the U.S., but we're actually seeing our exports to China at an all-time high, especially in pork. But with our own demand in the U.S. and not being able to produce as much, we're not able to satisfy our local consumer demands nor the Chinese demand. So that's actually forced China to look for new supply chains in Europe and Latin America. And I think that's one of the areas where we can definitely leverage our experience in the United States in knowing how to work with that Asia Pacific region. We can actually explain how we were able to reach those compliance so that the Latin America or the European areas can actually benefit from our experience that we've had in the U.S. to meet those new demands.
Yeah, I mean, in Latin America, what we've seen is an increased demand in just beef exports. This is all, like you said, Steve, is all due to plant shutdowns all across North America and Europe. So with export disruption in these regions, like Latin America has really had to pick up some of that demand in all these new markets. But, we're now local manufacturers need to make certain that each specifications and regulations are all precisely being met before exporting all this beef across the Atlantic or Pacific Ocean. But while Latin America has seen an overall uptick in beef production, one of the things we've seen also is that the U.S. has now seen an increase in overall pork exports.
I think it's a fascinating topic, isn't it, really, in the fact that the major exporting regions of the world, such as North America, Latin America, and the Australasia areas, are now going to benefit from the awful situation in China, which is basically where the African swine fever has decimated their pork population. And so that's traditionally Europe's not really been a huge exporting area from a meat perspective. But I think that's going to change, and several manufacturers now are seeking out contracts, seeking out opportunities in Europe. And indeed, Steve and I have already spoken about a few projects, how we can leverage that knowledge that he has in the systems that have been deployed in the US, which are basically higher throughput sites. And so if Europe does want to make that shift to become an exporting market, these are the challenges and the difficulties or obstacles that they're going to have to overcome: higher throughput, different regulations, exporting over vast distances, etc., etc. So I think, as a team, we actually bring quite a lot of knowledge to the different areas that we've got.
Okay, well, with all of these changes, it's obvious that the last thing that manufacturers want to worry about right now is a product recall due to a food safety or a quality issue. What are some solutions from Eagle to mitigate risk or help manufacturers streamline processes?
It's a good question, Christy, and it's definitely all. Manufacturers aren't choosing between quality and safety, it's both. And what Eagle can offer is a range of different solutions that can be inserted in various different areas of the production line, depending on the specific requirements of any particular project. And it's that breadth of our portfolio, our wide range of solutions, that really helps differentiate Eagle against our competitors. And then it's not just the actual individual machines either, because it's an important point to recognize that our individual X-ray machines, our core component, if you like, that's not necessarily a complete solution. Depending on the nature of an application, whether it's an upstream fat analysis application, a downstream carton inspection application, or maybe it's some further processing, in-process application, or maybe some finished goods type applications. We've got this really wide range of solutions, which nobody else can match, to suit a range of different inspection applications. But from that, or from those different individual insertion points, we can build out to create a comprehensive solution to suit the specific requirements of that opportunity or that project. And that's a real differentiator in that building up process, that from the machine, perhaps with a few peripheral items, rejects, a bit of software, some kind of material handling solution. And that's one of the big things that differentiates our approach to building up solutions. And like I said, we've got a solution for the vast majority of all the different types of applications you get, from raw material, basically trim or primals at the front end of the system, to finished goods at the end of a further processor's production line. And, you know, manufacturers are keen to explore all different areas, and some basic principles being, they want to check the raw materials as they're coming into their facility. Are they getting what they buy, what they pay for? They want to check what they sell. Are they actually ensuring that they give the customer what's actually being ordered? There's also probably some requirement to check products as it's going in or during the production process to make sure it's not been contaminated in some way. And then I would say we've got this huge wide range of different package solutions, and we've got something for them all. So that covers slaughterhouses and processors. And if we quickly just think about slaughterhouse, you've got management systems which allow slaughterhouses to pack to a specific specification. They can pack their crates, they can pack their cartons, and those individual building blocks, they're packed to specification. We could also have systems whereby we're packing large 500 kilo or 2,000 pound bins, again, to a desired target. And what we've actually got now is two concepts of how a customer specification of product is built up. Either you pack individual building blocks, or you can build the batch up to specification. Like I said, we've got solutions that can satisfy both concepts of working. And then when it comes to processes, we've got that incoming verification solution, the various different blending to target solutions, which means that we can actually build a different recipe, use multiple different raw materials, and work out how to ensure that we hit those recipe targets, despite some in the materials being used. And of course, whilst doing all that process optimization, we can also build on top of that with the vendor analytics as well. But we mustn't forget the whole end of line type solution, because in many European factories, as we were just talking about earlier, the throughput is looking to get an awful lot higher. What this means is, certainly from a European perspective, the management of that higher volume of product going out the door, that final check, is going to be amplified as we try and move to supplying into China, where there's a huge demand. And I think this is something that you in the US are pretty common in doing, to be honest, Steve. I mean, your throughputs are so much higher.
Yeah, right. I mean, so you touched on solutions from raw ingredients all the way to final packaging. And I'll just touch on one of the inline solutions we have here that's likely going to expand not only here, but also transfer to other markets. This one here is used as a form of export protection for final packaging. It's a case inspection, so a carton inspection, whereby we're reading the carton, we're identifying what type of product is in it, and then we're inspecting that, and then we're rejecting, we're passing it through, and the customer is getting a certain level of protection via that. But if we break that down and we actually look at this as being more than just an X-ray inspection system, something looking for contaminants, metal in the box, or bone, if you would. There's a lot of things in there that actually allows Eagle to be very successful in this that our competitors can't do. So if we just take and kind of break down the little steps of this project, we can look at, number one, we have a system large enough to actually inspect the cartons. Some of our competitors don't have systems that are that big. The next part is we have to be able to read and identify each of the different product codes. In some cases, these customers can have 1,200 barcodes, 1,200 product codes. And we actually take each one of those codes, look at it, classify that into a proper profile, and inspect it uniquely the way it should be. So if it's a bone-in product, we're going to inspect it for bone-in. If it's a boneless product, we're going to inspect it as a boneless. If it's a thinner product or a thicker product, we're going to inspect it to the best we can for each of those different product profiles. Then we have the ability to, and we do that all in real time. No one else can do that. All of our competitors will set a threshold and they'll just say, okay, here's your cartons. We're going to inspect it. And, you know, you're going to get basically your worst box is your best spec, right? So that's as good as you're going to get. The other thing we could do is speeds. You know, you mentioned the speeds. We're 25 to 50% faster than you are in Europe typically. And we've already managed to figure out how to do these inspections in real time at those speeds. So we're able to take these boxes, read the barcode, and if we look at the barcode, you know, we have our own suggestions on what we think would work best for these barcode readers. Usually it's a barcode camera because of backgrounds on cartons and different types of labels. But if a customer has a type of barcode reader that they use or a barcode scanner, we can integrate that into our system. And we do that sometimes because if a plant has that familiarity with that piece of equipment, they're more likely to not be afraid to touch it or calibrate it, right? So if we bring in a new piece of kit, sometimes they want to stay away from it. But our system is flexible enough that we can do that. The other thing we can do, again, is you know, sort by product in real time so that we're getting the best inspection, looking for various defects, whether it be mispack, mislabel, foreign objects. Mispack, mislabel is something like, you know, especially from the US, we can't ship a bone-in product to China, right? So we have to make sure that if it's labeled as a boneless, it actually doesn't have bones, right? The last thing you want to do is just ship them a box of bones. But also looking for other contaminants while it's in there, whether it be weight or other foreign objects, metal or typically metal. But as it goes through the system, we also reject that system. And then we also have a reject review station. So that allows the customer to look at this reject object, identify where the reject occurred, be able to remove that reject, and then classify that reject into a report so that management can review what are the defects. The other thing it allows you to do is in real time, if they get a number of rejects that happen in a period of time, the line lead can come over and say, hey, what's going on? Why do I have 5 of these types of rejects from this line? They can go back over to the line operator and either correct his behavior or find out why you're getting defects of that type. So it allows you to make adjustments in real time. And then we're reporting all this information as well. So you've got the immediate stuff that the line leads can do as they're seeing the information or the rejects occur out of the machine, but then management can review all the different product codes with all the different production reports attached to it. So in some of these cases, the management's reviewing this each day from the day before and understanding what their run rates are on each of the different product types. So they know if they're actually meeting these efficiencies that they were before. And I think all of those little things are what makes the Eagle flexibility so key, right? It's having software that's flexible. It's having the know-how of our team that knows all the different pieces you need to have in order to make a really good solution. And if we go past just the application and then we look at the software itself, you know, we can actually look at other reports as well, like calibration records. Were the customers calibrating the unit on schedule? Were they validating? Validation is like if you look at a metal detector, for example, they'll run these wands through the system and they write on a piece of paper that they ran this check, and that protects them for recalls, right? So they know that they checked it every hour and that's the limit of their exposure. You have the ability in our system to log in as a unique user run those contaminant ones, it captures the images, and you can go back and actually audit your process to make sure that user X actually validated that machine so that your exposure is even less, right? If an operator is coming over and changing the settings, for whatever reason, we can actually identify that and see, hey, operator X modified these settings. You should be aware, maybe it's not functioning the way it should be. We can also look at machine information. Is it at the right temperature, or is it at the right humidity? Any of these types of things that will affect the measurements, we can actually monitor those and give an alert if something is out of the ordinary. So it's machine information as well as production information. All of those types of things kind of package up and give you an actual solution, not just the X-ray system. So I think, Mauricio, you've got an example of something similar to this in Latin America as well, right?
Right. I mean, at this point, with you and Mike speaking, I don't know if I have time to even say anything else or add anything else in here. But yeah, Steve, I'm just playing. I mean, actually, last year we did have a similar application installed in Brazil. However, the model that we used out here was the FA3M model. This customer had different types of beef product where they were using similar stuff that you were doing too, with packaging, trim, weight, and CL specifications, all varied from one box to the next. So the way we were identifying this is by using barcode readers. We're doing this to recognize the product. That way, before the box would go through, the machine will auto switch to its related program. Therefore, identifying whether the product met, XYZ specs before, in order for our system to send a message to the label reader that was further down the line and let it know whether it met spec or it didn't. So at that point, like you mentioned, Steve, I mean, it's either it goes through and it gets loaded into the pallet, or it gets rejected and then it can go through a read workstation, so to speak. Another neat feature that we used and a tool we used here was our traceability software as well. Traceserver, the customer was able to extract all their throughput data through their ERP system via SQL server. But the same thing with you guys, all at real time. And I think you already hit all the other points. So
I think it's fascinating that as we're describing the different systems that have been implemented in our different regions,
yeah.
We've all drawn upon specific features and capabilities to build that solution, which kind of underlines the flexible approach that we have to building solutions for different customers. But at the same time, in order to know which particular feature or range of features we're going to call upon from our machines, we need to have that kind of detailed understanding of the application. What more can we do? And it never ceases to amaze me how much knowledge we actually have between the three of us. Obviously we're in a public position here, so I have to be polite how I talk to you guys. But it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because despite the differences in regions and the different ways in which we operate and the different products that get produced, there's a lot of similarities. I mean, over here in Europe, thinking just about FA systems, is that the whole supply chain, so that you can monitor, or further processors can monitor with their FA systems, not just how they produce, but what raw materials they are using in that production. They can capture all the data, as Steve was talking there about, capture all the data about the different products that are coming in. They can pass that through either through software from Eagle, or maybe the software already existing in a particular plant, about how those different meats are going to be combined to make the final product. Whether it's sausages, fresh, fermented sausages, whatever, hamburgers, you name it. They've all got different blending solutions available, but it all comes from capturing more data. And the more data that you've got, the better informed decisions can be made, which will lead to improvements in product safety, product quality, and process optimization. And on that last point about process optimization, the biggest thing that I'm seeing here in Europe is not just the way in which the arguments for process optimization resonate in these businesses, but with the additional factor of vendor analytics. Capturing all that data about what raw material is being bought in and how it's used, it gives them that additional bonus of being able to go back to their suppliers and say whether or not they were happy. Was it the right fat content? Did it have an excessive amount of contaminants contained? And with that clear evidence, backed up with that clear trail of how the system was verified, validated, checked, so that they've got the confidence in the evidence that our systems create to go back and speak to their suppliers. I mean, that's a massive thing. I mean, we could probably talk for hours more about this, Christy. I sense you're kind of waving the stopwatch in our faces here, but I'm going to stop there for now.
I was going to bring up, Mauricio has a point. We are starting to run out of time. But I do want to thank all three of you for sharing all of this information, and give you one more chance to share with us a takeaway for our talk today. Anyone? Mike?
I'll go.
Mauricio, you go.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Christy, thank you for having us. I mean, it's not, always that all four of us can meet, especially in today's situation that we are the new normal, so to speak. So, but yeah, my takeaway would be that managing quality and critical control points has and will always be an essential part in the meat industry. I mean, let's think about this. Some of these manufacturing plants are experiencing high demand and cannot afford any disruption in the process. So all while maintaining and meeting first-class specification to their customers. So with limited floor personnel, given the circumstances, obviously, the future, I believe, will lie in automation, specifically inspection systems that are critical to food safety and quality.
I'll go next. To me, the key takeaway is the importance of information utilization. So data. The customers make better decisions when they have the data to make those decisions.
I mean, there's a couple of final thoughts that I'd like to leave with everyone. Really, is that as we touched on a few times through the session. Pardon?
You only
get one, Mike.
No, not at all. Not at all. Okay, two said very quickly. As manufacturers around the world are looking to drive improvements in efficiency, Steve's absolutely bang on that the more data you can capture from your production line, the greater the degree of efficiency can be implemented when you use that data correctly. And understanding how to do that, understanding what systems, what software, how it can all be pulled together in a solution, that's what we three know how to do. I mean, I think we might have slightly more than 50 years worth of experience here, Christy. I think it shows on the faces of me and Steve. It's very unfair. It doesn't show that at the moment. It's terrible.
Is it because I still have hair, Mike?
But between the three of us, and backed up by all the engineering teams as well in Eagle, there is a huge amount of expertise. And that's what we bring to the market. A great range, a flexible range of comprehensive solutions for various different points in the expertise to know how to deploy them.
All right, great. Thank you again, gentlemen. I really appreciate your time and your input on the state of the meat industry. I hope those of you watching found it helpful to hear different perspectives about the state of the meat industry from around the world. If you would like to speak with Mike, Mauricio, or Steve about a specific application, please email eaglesales@eaglepi.com. And I think that's a wrap. Thank you so much.
Hello. Hey, everybody.
Welcome
There we go.
back.
We're live now.
The meat experts.
Hi, everybody. I think can everybody hear us? I would assume.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I received a lot of questions during the video. We have about 15 minutes for in order to address as many questions as possible. So let's go ahead and jump in.
Yeah, and also Christy, and for those Spanish-speaking customers that are here attending, si tienen cualquier pregunta en español, también no se preocupe, aquí estamos para ayudarles con eso también. Just everybody, helping everybody.
Okay, so here is a question we have. Is there any particular size of business for slaughterhouse for which your solutions are best suited?
I'll take that one, Christy. The answer is that the Eagle range of solutions are very scalable. So what that means is that if you've got, say, a relatively small throughput site, a slightly more basic system might be appropriate. But if you've got a higher throughput site, a more sophisticated system which has the X-ray device in the center, a very clever, very reliable device which is capturing all the information, and then the system around it is delivering the reactive, the corrective activity.
Yeah.
But the basic rule is the higher the throughput, the greater degree of automation or sophistication justified to go around that machine. And so as a consequence of that scalability, it means that even if you have a relatively small or low throughput maybe 5 to 10 tons a day or more of BL product, you're still going to get an exceptional return. Of course, the greater the throughput of the site, you can have some more sophisticated aspects to it. And that's one of the things that we've been touching about in the discussion, in the fact that while slaughterhouses in the norm, as it were, in the US and in Latin America tend to be of a much higher scale than what you might typically see here in Europe, that whole concept of, let's say, fat analysis still delivers an exceptional return, provided you've got the scalability of the solution.
Yeah. It's that return of investment, you know?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to try a question because I'm not sure everyone read the chat, but I have one. It says packaging materials are changing from plastic to other materials. How does this affect X-ray systems?
You, Steve, we've trained you now. You go.
Yeah.
It really depends on the application and the material type. So as a generalized, most packaging materials, we're going to be able to inspect it and see whatever's inside of it. But it depends on what it is you want to find, what your contaminant is, and what the material is. So we do things from inspecting soup cans or other types of cans. We do the Tetra packs. We do cardboard or foil packages. All of those are fairly easy for X-ray. So it really depends. What is the application, the speed, the defect that they're trying to find? We need to know all of those things before we can just make a blanket answer. But typically, X-ray is pretty good about seeing through the packaging.
I think I'd probably just add a little bit. I mean, obviously that's correct, Steve, but I'd add to it and say that changing materials is something that's happening more and more as new manufacturers are introducing new products. Production lines are getting busier and busier. What you often see now is multiple different product types, certainly in that end of line area, perhaps going down one line. So again, one of the things that we touched on in our session was the ability to handle variability. So while we might be inspecting product A with a certain criteria, a different product could also go down that same line, and we can switch between different contaminant setups so that you get an optimum inspection despite the fact that the two materials could be different. So that flexibility of our solutions carries real value as more and different materials and packaging formats are being introduced in the production line. And that's something I don't think too many of our competitors can handle. It's a system goes in and they leave it. But when we put a system in, we want to keep it in there for a long time so that the end customer gets maximum value from it.
And I see there's a lot of changes that are going on. For example, I saw somebody on the chat had posted something about they're exporting or they're doing more pizza dough. It's something that they're doing more, and I think it was in Spain. And it's something we're seeing all around. I mean, different type of packagings like we're talking about now with plastic, different type of products. I mean, the industry's changing, so we just need to, we have the system to adapt. And I also read somebody said that my English was the hardest one to understand too. Sorry, Tongo. Sorry about that.
I think the fact that pizza dough is a growing area, it demonstrates the change in consumer habits.
Yeah.
So as more people are eating from home, let's say, as a consequence of all the restaurants and food service outlets closing down, that demand, not just in the meat sector to be fair, but across the whole food sector, has changed,
Absolutely.
moving from food service to a domestic setting, which has triggered that spike in retail opportunities. So all those changes that manufacturers are having to go to, they need flexibility from their equipment suppliers to be better able to make the change, which, as we spoke about, is expensive. But if we can mitigate that cost by showing how flexible our solutions are, that again, that drives value. It's valuable for manufacturers to have that flexibility built in to the equipment that they invest in.
Yeah.
Okay. What are the species for which FA works?
Where are the species? All. Yeah, we could do it all. I mean, we've received a lot of where we could do, whether it's beef, whether it's pork. One of the things that, at least in Latin America, I think I can speak for my side, is that they ask us a lot for the MDM product. And that's just, it could be like a block that's already has bone already in the material. That is one of those things that is, we can do it. I know because I've been asked a lot, and we can do it. However, the accuracy on the CL for that will be a little bit obscured, I would say. It'll be a little bit different, that it's just a fresh beef product. And I think you and I were talking about this the other day, Mike, about just the differences on accuracy that we can do with that type of product. And we see it a lot. I don't know if you guys see it a lot in Europe, but we do see it a lot in Latin America.
It's true. I mean, to answer that question, the primary red meat products like beef, lamb, pork, the FO technology we have is extremely accurate, plus or minus 1 CL. But of course, in various parts of the world, there are other common red meats that get consumed. Water buffalo is one that comes straight to mind. And the basic principle is fat analysis technology will work in any of those applications, provided the inspection is done before any kind of chemical alteration takes place with the meat, such as cooking or seasoning. That changes the chemical composition of the product itself. Some of those other products, for example, FA technology works well on poultry. The payback isn't quite as good because poultry meat tends to be much leaner in its composition and less variable in some red meat applications. But when we start talking about things like MDM, which tends to have a slightly higher calcium content as a consequence of how it's produced, FA works, but the accuracy of the measurement might not be quite as good as, say, what we see in our traditional red meat applications.
Okay. What size metal can you find in trim with your systems, with our systems?
I think that would vary. It could vary from product, whether you're doing trim, whether you're doing blocks. That is a question we get often, and I mean, Mike, you want to take that one, or Steve?
Yeah. Typically, I mean, it really does depend on your product flow, and even the leanness of your product is going to have some impact on that as well. When it's more fatty, it has less absorption, so you'll see a little bit better. When it's really lean, you'll see a darker image, and you'll see a slightly larger metal spec. But a good answer for that is typically between 1.8 millimeters and 3 millimeters. 3 millimeter would be your worst case scenario at about 7 3/4 inches in thickness, and your 1.8 would be in a typical 4-inch type of flow. So that's down to the number 8 bird shot that normally we see, at least in the States. in most cattle operations, we'll see these birdshot, suspect carcasses, and that's the kind of metal they're looking for, and we find that.
Yeah, that does come down to, and we spoke about it on the video, it comes down to the shades of gray that we have, sort of like what we call the pixels. So we're working anywhere from 0 to 65,000, as opposed to other suppliers work from 0 to 256. That's kind of like where we can see that big difference in contrast and able to identify these small contaminants in such big pieces of, 25 kilo, 50-pound blocks.
This is also an example whereby some of the more advanced capabilities in our operating system, simultask, can optimize the way in which that inspection takes place. So if we think about a standard 400 by 600 carton, 27 kilos of meat. Now, if you just look at, if you're trying to perform a fat analysis, if you're performing fat analysis on that carton, the density will vary depending on how lean it is. Now, while its physical shape might stay the same and its weight might stay the same, as a consequence of that variation in density and as a consequence of the different position in that carton of the contaminant, it could actually be better to have different circumstances to suit different positions of where the contaminant is. So what I mean by that is, if you're inspecting a 60 VL carton, the optimum inspection to find that 1.8 millimeter stainless steel sphere could be slightly different to when you're inspecting a 95 VL carton. And we can introduce that kind of setup in the machine. And again, that kind of capability really differentiates Eagle from our competitors, such that the contaminant detection across the whole range of products that's produced is superior. And that's just one example of the kind of advanced features that we have to ensure contaminant detection across all the different types of contaminant that there are, metals, the different types, the aluminiums, which is 1/3 the density of steel, the steels of this world, the leads of this world, the different other materials such as the stones, the glass. And glass itself has got a multitude of different mineral contents which affect how the inspection performance can be delivered. And those advanced features in simultask, that allows us to get the absolute best possible performance. Exactly as you said, Mauricio, in terms of taking advantage of that more than 65,000 shades of grey. I mean, I could talk for hours about this, to be quite honest. I'm not too sure everybody. The point that I would leave with is, from a contaminant inspection perspective, simultask is worlds apart from any other operating system.
It's important just to note that all of this stuff we do in real time. So you can be running a 65 or a 95 down the line at the same time, and we would be able to switch automatically in real time. Other competitors, they can set different product profiles, but not run at the same time. So that's important as well.
Very important.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. What are the biggest factors to consider when buying an X-ray machine?
I'd say, buy it from me. Don't speak to Steve or Maurizio. That was the first factor. The first point that I would say, and I'm definitely interested to hear what Steve and Maurizio think about this, is speak to a company that actually know what they're talking about. And that means knowledge of two things: knowledge of the technology and knowledge of the application. Some companies seem to have one or the other, but I think it's very rare that you've got a supplier that has both, and that's where we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think the number one thing is going to be, do your research, understand what is it your expectations are. Form what your expectations are, then talk to several companies and find out, are those realistic? And once you do, bring in somebody to actually evaluate your line or what your application needs are and put together a solution. I think some of the things I see anyway, we might come in after the fact and try and help somebody recover a project, is, they bought an X-ray, but they didn't consider how that X-ray was going to be implemented. So they don't think about, how it was being fed, how it was being taken away. What do they do with all the reject or the new rejects that they've
Right.
never seen in their plants before? What information is available from the system? How do they use that information to modify their behavior? So, talking to somebody that can help you through what it is that system can do for you is probably one of the most important things. And then they can tell you about, whatever the cost of ownership is, or the type of system you're going to need, x-ray power, things like that. But really, it's about talking to somebody that can understand your application and lead you down the right path.
Yeah, that's one of the things that us at Eagle, we definitely like to work with our customers is definitely like to educate them and be more of like consultants with them, working with them rather than just be like a salesman to come into the plant. So just like you guys mentioned, everything of showing them what they have in their line right now, what they're passing through, what their return of investment can be by just applying certain tools, because there's no reason to just put an X-ray machine if you're not getting the full benefits around it. And that's what we provide. We bring in a solution. We don't just put a machine in and tell you this is what it's going to do. The plan for us as working with our customers is to make sure that we just be able to use everything that we have in our tools to make sure that we can help them out and provide them the best solution that we can.
Well, clearly, there has been a lot of interest in all of the topics raised during this session. Unfortunately, we are out of time for today. To arrange a one-on-one discussion with one of these fine fellows to talk about your specific application needs, please email your company and contact data to eaglesales@eaglepi.com. eaglesales@eaglepi.com. They love to talk meat and they are happy to help. Thank you again for attending. Have a nice day and stay
Thank
healthy.
you, everybody. Thank you for coming.